You could have heard this episode 48 hours early on our Patreon, patreon.com/indieheadspodcast. By joining us for as low as $1 a month, you'll receive episodes early, gain access to our Discord server, and get weekly playlists from the Indieheads podcast crew. All of our upcoming episodes, including our upcoming series, Car Commercial Number 1s, will be on our Patreon 48 hours before it hits our public podcast feeds. If you're hearing this via our Patreon feed, we thank you so much for your support. But before we begin this episode, we want to thank our Real Ones patrons, including Derek Pemberton, Maze Farms, Bex, and Rachel. To become a Real One, consider supporting us with a $5 a month donation on patreon.com/indieheadspodcast. Anyways, enjoy the episode.
What you're about to hear is a leak recording from the Indieheads podcast chat room. Listener discretion is advised.
If I see y'all do it again, you're fucking gone, okay? We are the gold standard. They're back there in fucking Brooklyn, making podcasts right now because of us. Because they believe in us and what we're doing. I'm on the phone with every fucking streaming service at night, advertising companies, your Dollar Shave Clubs and shit. The people's on the ones and twos, and they're looking at us. And they're using us to make their podcast. We are creating thousands of jobs, you motherfuckers. I don't ever want to see it again. Ever. You can tell the fucking people in their, losing their fucking homes because our industry is shut down. It's not going to put food on their table or pay for their college education. That's what I sleep with every night. The future of this fucking industry. So I'm sorry. I am beyond your apologies. I have told you, and now I want it, and if you don't do it, you're out. We are not shutting this fucking podcast down. Is it understood? Is it understood? If I see it again, you're fucking gone. Am I clear? Do you understand what I want? Do you understand the responsibility that I have? Because I will deal with your reason, and if you can't be reasonable, and I can't deal with your logic, you're fired. That's it. That is it. I trust you guys to be here and stop dress posting on Maine. Is that clear?
We can get paid for podcasting?
Maybe. We'll discuss it, okay? But you gotta follow. Oh fuck. Okay, let's get on with the show.
This one.
That was my first time hearing that full monologue, and like a lot of swearing and yelling, but on the whole, like a pretty defensible take.
Honestly, yeah. Tom Cruise is like completely in the right here. Completely in the right.
This is Christian Bale again. They're just mad at him for raising his voice. Which I don't like when people raise their voices, but I get it.
Yeah,
keep especially posting on Maine, but
But anyways, hello everybody. Welcome to the Indieheads podcast. I'm your host, Matty, aka @MotorVNPrince on Twitter. On this episode of the pod, we have Rose.
Big podcast, big microphone, loved it.
We have Lily.
Hello. At a now locked Twitter account. Don't try to find me. I don't know what to tell you guys. I'm dying and it's not blissful. That's right.
We got Dill.
Hey.
And we got Nat.
Hi. At Frame the Pick on Twitter. That's all.
Alrighty. So we are here today. Did I say? I said today.
That is indeed me.
We're here today to an extent, but we are here today to begin our countdown of our top 11 albums of the year. Now, of course, we usually do top 10, but we had a tie at the top at the 11 point, so we're just doing 11 because fuck it, why not? So because dudes rock. But before we launch into this podcast proper, I do want to thank a couple of our patrons. We actually have a new one, so I'm going to go and make sure, but I know for sure. We want to thank Derek Pemberton. We want to thank Maze Farms. We want to thank Bex, and we want to thank Rachel, who just joined us as a $5 a month Real One patrons. So we thank you so much for supporting us on Patreon. And of course, if you want to support us on Patreon, patreon.com/Indieheads podcast. Of course, we start at $1 a month. And for just $1 a month, you get episodes 48 hours early. You get access to our Discord server, and you get weekly playlists from the podcast crew. If you're a patron and you're listening to this right now, we may be skipping the playlist this week, or at the very least, I will probably just do the playlist myself for this week, just because we'll be hard at work getting our album of the year list fully together, because we're putting out a Medium article probably at the beginning of next week. So hey, we'll have written content for y'all very, very soon. But nevertheless, we're here today to begin the countdown, our countdown proper. So, of course, last episode, we went to the podcast awards. Once again, congratulations to our Song of the Year winner, Hoobastank, for the Reason Acoustic.
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
I'm so proud.
Dill, you've been our diligent, our ballot watcher. What are your thoughts on our Song of the Year, Hoobastank, the Reason Acoustic?
I hate all of you. I don't know what this bit is. I don't know who started it.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
I don't know what the end goal was, but congratulations on getting to it. Yeah, I hate it. I hate it. Yeah.
I'm not with you.
But with that out of the way, let's get into Let's Proper. So coming in at number 11/10, the 10 is a tie, but the first one we're talking about is Dogleg Melee, who of course were nominated for Breakout Star of the Year. Now our number 10/11 on our list. And Rose, did you want to intro us to the world of Melee by Dogleg?
Okay, so the last concert I saw before concerts were canceled forever was Dogleg, and they fucking rip. I don't know if y'all know this, but they rip. And so yeah, this album is like a perfect distillation of pretty much everything they did. Like nearly every song here I would classify as a perfect rock song. It is just majestic front to back. Like you listen to just every little decision choice they make, and it feels like just a really brilliant piece of machinery, kind of just made to rock more than anything. If y'all want to go
we
from
discussed we discussed Dudes Rock earlier, but truly, Dudes fucking rock. I am somewhat with you on this record. Again, I don't want to here's the thing. I might put out like a bonus episode later on going through my own top 10, just because we need bonus content. But my list differs a little. My own top 10 differs pretty heavily from our collective one. Spoilers, but nevertheless, this is a really good record. It's a very strong debut. And it's when it's like, okay, I'm really, really excited to see where this band goes next. Because the first half of this record, and then a little bit after that, again, it's just rippers on rippers. Like this whole album, it goes so fucking hard, you know. Like it's guitars, rock and roll music with guitars, just you love it. You love to hear it. And again, I think I heard Fox last year. Was it Fox? Was that the first single, Fox?
Yeah, Fox was the first single, and then it was followed by Kawasaki Backflip.
Yeah, so Fox comes out and it's just like, and it's like, oh shit, this band is gonna be really, really big going into 2020. Like, holy shit, like this band's gonna go on like a crazy tour next year.
I mean, an emo band getting best new track.
Exactly. It was like, oh yeah, this is gonna be a big record, huh? And of course, Kawasaki Backflip comes out. It's like, oh damn, like this band,
they have
I've never heard of this band before. It's fucking good. And then obviously more singles and whatnot, and the album comes out. And like I said, overall though, I'm not as high on this record as a lot of people are. I do think it begins to lose its steam in the second half a bit, although I'm not sure if that's because maybe the songs could have been a bit shorter. The album itself could have just been shorter. I'm not sure what it is.
I mean, the songs
no, we
are
disagree
shorter in
there
the
though.
back half, so
Well, the end song is like 6 minutes long.
Yeah, I know, but Ender, like, it kind of deserves that because
Ender's
it's doing a whole lot at once. Like, it's got the orchestral shit and as well as like the main movements as well.
I do agree with that. I think Ender is a good song, but I do think like overall there's just something about the record where it begins to lose a little bit of steam for me in the second half. And I'm not sure if it's just because like
I
the
think the
record
only
starts to blend together towards that end half, or it's just like the record, it's not even that long. It's only like 35 minutes long, which is like usually for me like that's like a pretty ideal album length. But it just goes. But again, it is a debut record. It is a very young band, and they can't all be Schwagenheims.
See, I think the only track that I'm kind of like a downer on is Hotlines because I don't know. That's the only riff where I'm like, like yeah, you put that roundup of War Turtle, Wrist, Cannonball, and Ender, and it's like, oh shit, like it's just really excellent songwriting all the way front to back, and they're doing a lot of different things with the riffs. Again, it's just all riffs, and I like that's what I want in a rock record more than anything. It's just good guitars.
Mm-hmm. And I also just wonder, it's just the fact that obviously didn't really get a chance to like tour this record makes me think a little bit less of it, just because like this is a record that like after listening to it live I would probably appreciate a hell of a lot more, knowing like the memories I would have attached to these songs. Like I love Jeff Rosenstock as much as I do because I have so many memories attached to those songs now from seeing him live. And so I wonder if that's why maybe I'm not as hot on this record as I would, because they would have for sure been in St. Louis, probably in the summer, if not for COVID. But that's a different conversation to have, I guess. Was there any other thoughts on Melee before we move on in the list? Because again, I think this record overall it fucking whips. It deserves a spot on our list. But it's I have my reservations.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add. I'll admit I'm fully resting on my laurels for what I will call like the dudes rock portion of this episode. Eventually, we'll get into the women emote portion, and then I'll have some things to say.
There we go. But let's continue with the list then. Our next album, also tied for number 10, is the new Young Jesus album, Welcome to Conceptual Beach. I think we talked about this on our Q3 catch-up episode, but obviously, hey, I think some of us have a bit more to say, a bit more to articulate about this record. As I said at the time, it is one of my favorite records of the year. It actually, I think it landed. I put up my own year-end list already. I put up my topsters. This was at number 4 on my own personal list, and it is a record that, I mean, continually I go back to it. I'm just like, God damn, like they really did it, And I just want to highlight. I think I maybe talked about it on that podcast, but I'm just going to reiterate it. In the middle of the record, there is. Let me make sure I get the track name correct, because I have a terrible fucking memory. Because I don't. It's been a bad year, folks. Meditations, the centerpiece, essentially the centerpiece of the record. And there's this bit about 2 or 3 minutes in where you start to feel like the song is falling apart. You start to see drum parts feel a bit off, the pianos feel a bit off, the guitars feel a bit off. And you're like, oh shit, like, did someone miss their cue on something? But then just the song, it sort of corrects itself into place. And you're just like, holy shit, like this band has just such a demanding control over their craft. And really, that feeling of feeling a song is about to fall apart and then seeing the pieces come back together before your very eyes. Just, it's one of my favorite feelings to have when listening to a song. And I feel like this entire record is filled to the brim with like those moments. And it's just such a beautiful, spiritual, cathartic record that, it's very, at times very, maybe not nuance is the word I'm looking for. It's like not exactly laid back, not exactly nuanced, but it doesn't, it knows where to pick its moments where, John Rossiter gets really, really passionate in the vocals, obviously like the ending of Meditations, where has his Haley Hendrix moment where he's just, continually singing and eventually getting louder and louder. I want to be around and live it. And then, moments on obviously like Unknowing, like that moment where it breaks through is just incredible. But I remember, I probably said on the podcast, but I remember because I had this record early for my No Earbuds internship, and I was like, Dill, you're gonna love this record. And then what do you know? Dill, you love the record.
Matty was right. Matty was right, and you know what? I wish I could be upset about that, but I'm not, because this record whips ass.
It's
I
so
put this
good.
on, yeah, I put this, I think, number 4 on my own personal top 10 list. Um, it's just a really great, I'm not like this is like my like idealized version of like what a jam band sounds like. This isn't really even jam band really, but like this sort of noodling around to get to like a larger point reminds me a whole lot of like Tortoise and Dirty Three and these other like older post rock groups that I feel like Young Jesus pulls a lot of influence from, and also just the whole sort of like transcendentalist narrative theme that seems to occupy the majority of the record. The personal narrative, the feeling of intimacy and isolation in equal lengths is for a record that's like this record's only what like 40 minutes, like 45 minutes, something like that. Like it's not
It's
particularly long, I don't think.
yeah, 46. Yeah, 46 minutes.
Yeah.
But obviously, it's 46 minutes spread across like 7 songs. So like, but really, it's mostly just in the back half of the record, where
Yeah.
like that, because both Lark and Magicians, Lark is like over 11 minutes long, and Magicians is just over 10. So, and yeah, that's the thing. Like, obviously, like long songs when I was younger. By younger, I mean like back in like 2016 when I was really obsessed with Teens of Denial. I love long songs. I love long songs that really warranted their length, because I feel like if you're gonna make a song that's like really close to 10 minutes, it's like, okay, like you knew you had some kind of musical idea, some kind of motifs that you really thought you could successfully build across this long length of time. And I feel like this record sort of brings some of that magic back to me, where at this point, some of the really long songs I don't always have the patience for. But this, like, I have the patience for it, because I think like I've been getting back into. It's funny you mentioned like the transcendental like meditation and shit, because I'm probably going to start rewatching Twin Peaks again soon, because I finally watched that Twin Perfect video, the 4 hour long Twin Peaks explained video, and it's got me thinking about Twin Peaks again. And I feel like there's weirdly a lot of parallels in Twin Peaks in this record. This sort of, or at least just David Lynch is like philosophy of this meditation, but also heavy patience, and letting things properly build up, and not exactly getting the closure that you wanted per se, but it is closure that not the closure, but it is an ending that leaves you thinking and leaves you wanting more. And that's been my listens to this record. It's just like by the end of it, I'm just like, okay, I want more of this. And but at the same time, it's perfectly it's perfect as it is. Like I said, it's my
Mhm.
number 4 favorite album of the year. It's one that I immediately, as I heard Faith, I was just like, oh, this is a step up, because Jack, because they were they were really big on this record, on their last record. And I only got the hype a little bit, but this record was just like, oh, this is a band putting all the pieces together. This is the band like
Mm.
finally finding itself after all these years, and it's just it's really magical. And I wish more people were talking about it and more people were putting it on their list. Because I think really the only people that have been standing out for this record have been Stephen Hayden and Ian Cohen, really, in terms of critics. Because for the
Mhm.
most part, this record does not show up in a year-end list aside from theirs.
Yeah, like this definitely feels like very artistically mature for a fourth record, I think.
I think, yeah, this is their fourth, either their fourth or their
Fourth or
fifth.
fifth. Yeah, no, it's their fifth. It's their fifth.
Okay.
Yeah, but still, like it feel like you're right when you feel that tangible um, building of artistic and creative notion listening to it. And just I think what really grabs me about this record is just that feeling of being engaged during the entire time as well, which particularly for a record that sounds like this, when you're pulling from post rock and you're pulling from you know um art rock and some of these other genres that tend to take their time getting to the point. Um, Interest can tend to ebb and flow and dip at certain points, but not really with this record. I mean, I can put on, um, side one, which is from uh, Faith all the way through Meditations, I think, and just
Mhm.
be there for like every single second, and then I can flip it over to the second side and just kind of feel that releasing, I think, of like this strange anxiety and tension that has been building this entire time. And you feel at home with this record, you know. I think my first impression of listening to this record was uh the day it came out. It was like a very bright sunny day. Um and I just opened up my window, and it was like partly cloudy outside my window, and my window has it to where the sun kind of directly streams in the morning. So I just kind of threw that record on and just like laid on my bed and just kind of watched like the sunrise come through my window, and it was this very just peaceful notion to all of it. It was like very comforting feeling, but not it was a strange comfort where it's like it's not in like a hiding away from the world, but more facing it head on. Um, and I don't know. This record is fantastic, and I can ramble on more about it, but I won't for the sake of time.
Mhm. I mean, just to put it simply, I feel like I feel like the thesis of this record for me is in Meditations. It's my favorite song on the record. Obviously, just the whole I want to be around and live it.
Hmm.
And
Yeah, no, you're
especially
exactly
especially now, it's like, yeah, I wish to be around and live it. Like he really said something there. Like damn, I really do be wanting to live around and want to be around and live it. But yeah, shit. This again, great record. Number 10 on our list, Young Jesus, Welcome to Conceptual Beach. Again, if you're not listening to this record, like, please check it out. It's one of the most, it is one of, collectively, me and Dill, one of our favorite records of the year. Like, you know,
That's right.
it's it's
That's
rare that
right.
we cross paths, in our music taste sometimes. So when we link up and build, you must, join us on this journey. But nevertheless, number 9 on our list. Of course, it is Adrian Linker with her new album, Songs. Lily/Rose, which one of you? I know you two are fans of this record. Which one of you wants to take it away from here?
I can start. Oh, Adrian Lanker just keeps making it look easy. Like, I was thinking about this leading into this, that like she's kind of one of the few artists right now where like, yeah, she did another one is like said as like a good thing. Like, she's established such a specific kind of like songwriting and sonic vocabulary and lyrical vocabulary to the point where like if she has a new album out, a new solo record, at least like you pretty much know what that's going to be. And yet she just keeps embellishing and expanding what she's doing in these subtle little ways where like you, if from a songwriting perspective, like songs and Hibiscus are not dissimilar from each other necessarily in their sensibility, and yet songs just exist in like this totally different sonic environment that really, really, I think sets it apart and sort of, I think, incorporates also a lot of the like more experimental tendencies from like UFOF. And the fact that she was able to incorporate that so organically into her acoustic material is really interesting. And it's super interesting too that was pretty much born out of the circumstances the album was recorded in, that like she decamped to this studio after their tour got canceled because of the pandemic and decided to just kind of make almost like I was thinking about like this album is like a field recording that someone happens to be performing in the middle of. Like there's so much happening in terms of the room sound and the noise floor and the sound of the environment. You can hear rain falling in the roof in a couple of tracks. Tracks will like start and end with, reverb or like, something trailed off from another take or a botch take. And it feels so in the moment and very much in the space, which seems to be something she's sort of focused on thematically more and more over the last couple like solo and Big Thief records is this notion of like presence and nowness and space, and really like tapping into, you know, the other like frequencies that you are around and what you're doing. And this album is such an interesting manifestation of that, and like another just great laurel in her cap, because like between her solo career and Big Thief, like she's on a fucking run, and this album absolutely continues the run.
Adrian, I will absolutely never stop going in Lanker.
Truly.
Yeah, she's really just fucking killed it consistently, and it's pretty amazing to see. Like, I personally prefer instrumentals of the two albums she released, but like this one has some really great melodies. Like, I don't know what to expect at this point beyond, you know, she's fucking doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like we should shout out instrumentals, you know, just the best grouper album of 2020, really.
This is true. This is absolutely true.
Oh, give me those vibes all day long. But yeah, I think there's a lot of great things happening on songs, and a lot of great things that, like I said, kind of set it apart from the rest of her discography in these very subtle but very sort of compelling ways. I think lyrically, there's a bit of a shift on here too. Her imagery is so much more direct and visceral. She's not playing in the abstract so much. There's a lot of like really, I feel like a lot of her past work has dealt with these kind of striking ideas, whereas this is really delving into like these striking images. Like Injadar seems like such a peaceful song when you're listening to it, and then you remember that like right, half of this song is about like a rotting horse's corpse. There's tons of like just guts and gore and grit to the lyrics on this album, which feels like a very appropriate reflection of the subject matter, which I think is also something that for me at least is very significant about this album, is that like, you know, previous her previous work, you know, has sort of always like been vaguely queer coded, and there's been gestures towards queerness within Big Thief lyrics, but this seems like the first time she's like, no, this is a breakup album about a gay breakup. It was a lesbian breakup, and it happened lesbianically, and that is the framework through which we are processing these feelings in the album, and that feels like a very cool step for her as well, to be sort of incorporating that very, very candidly into these lyrics. I am all for it.
Yeah, something there's a particular quality of her lyricism, just always kind of tapping into these kind of personal, intimate, raw narratives. But as you said, like before, sometimes there would be these tendencies to kind of abstract it or kind of like play up the language. And I feel like here, coupled with the sort of background that the album was kind of like birthed into, it almost kind of really emphasizes that like personal, intimate nature of it in a way that I feel like put me a little bit like closer in terms of the human heart of it than like at least a couple of other like Big Thief records. I haven't had that much time to spend with this one quite yet, but it is one that like some of those like narratives, like the one on Come was specifically one where I was just kind of like listening to it in the background, and then halfway through when I realized what it was about, just kind of like snapped me into place. It's really just kind of like one of those records that like there is inevitably going to be a moment that kind of like unseats you when you're listening to it, and I think that that's tremendous.
Yeah, I feel like almost every song has one of those. I felt I had that listening to Come Today too. I was like, oh right, it's this song. It's the song that's about this. And yeah, I do think it's very cool. Like, you know, Big Thief stuff, she's talked about how she deals a lot with like, you know, these sort of characters and alter egos and other personas that are like aspects of herself, and use that to create a little bit of distance. But she's like really driving into full raw confessional territory here. And again, like some of it just really makes your eyes pop out of your skull. Like, you know, this is the album that this year gave us 6 years in No Baby. a line that still has me reeling like every time. And there's a lot of that kind of just, you know, devastating concision laced throughout the record. And again, it's an album that you can either be comforted by or devastated by based off how you want to listen to it. You're like, do I really want to listen to what she's saying, or do I just want to like have some nice fluttery guitars? And it's equally rewarding on both levels, because the songwriting and the lyricism is just so tight. Like she's really one of the best out there on both of those fronts right now. And this record like absolutely cements her status as that.
Completely
She's
agreed.
like
Yeah.
a future one of the greats.
Yeah. Again, I won't say much, because again, I spent very little time on this record, and obviously we all know how I usually feel about Big Thief records. But I was actually, the first listen I did have of this was actually like, oh wow, was pleasantly surprised with how engaged I was with it. But especially, I do want to highlight. I don't think we talked about the track yet. Ingidar. That is my favorite song on the record. Like that one is one of the best like songs I've ever heard. She's ever written to me. But again, there's only a couple that I like from her, so that's not saying a whole lot. But it's one that I find really engaging, and obviously I think the write up that went up on Indieheads the day really was like, okay, maybe I should give this record another shot, because I was like, really engaged with that write up. So I will have to return this record maybe.
Yeah, Ingadar is definitely, like, I hold that opinion about it as well, and I've like taken the deep dive on her over the past year or so. Yeah, I mean, everything eats and is eaten. Like, what else can you say? You just have to hear that line and just take a big fucking breath about your existence in the cosmos.
I would like. I think I would like go coming off of the Emma Ruth Rundle and Tho collab. I would like an Adrian Lenker and some other black metal band collab.
Oh, for sure. Okay, I'm going to be trying to draft that for the rest of the episode now.
Who are we pulling for that one though?
If we're gonna go with like obscure podcore, go with like Ohava.
Yeah, that came to mind.
I'm down with that.
Yeah.
Or like a similar vein, we could get like an Adrian Lenker / like I'll Say record.
Oh my god. Okay.
That'd be something.
Oh.
I'm going to kill Lily with this sentence. It's not a black metal band, but put her with Holy Fawn.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, she could definitely slot in nicely with the lighter side of their sound, for sure. That, or I do want to, as like Emma Ruth Rundle did, see her just like guest on a body record, just like if you're on a Dragged into Sunlight project, that'd be. I mean, hey, Adrian Lenker, noted metalhead, she stands Ithaca, so like, who knows what else she's been getting into this year.
I think I would go Adrian and Lingua Ignota, actually.
Oh yeah. Well, we could do this all day.
we could.
Adrian Lenker fantasy football.
Now, if we want to pair Adrian with a hard rock band, I think I know just the fellas that'd be a really good fit with her.
Don't fucking say it. Don't you fucking say it.
Please go to the soundboard.
It's time. I think it's time for Adrian to be welcome to the rock show. I think she should collab with the Merchants of Midnight, baby.
Everything welcomes and is welcome to the rock show.
Oh boy. Okay, I think that's an appropriate place to end our discussion on Adrian Lenker's songs. Number 9 on our list. Number 8. Okay. I know. I said at the beginning, as a guy, I got caught in the hot mic at the beginning of the episode, but I want to apologize, and I'm allowing your bodies and spaces. I'm allowing you guys to have that, your bodies and spaces and things of that nature. It is time to finally dress post on Maine. Lily, what is our number 8 album of the year?
Oh, y'all mind if I grab the Chaos Emeralds real quick? Because I'm gonna. Black Dresses, Peaceful as Hell, is our number 8. Finally, after a failed 3-year for your consideration campaign, I have bullied enough of the rest of the podcast into putting Black Dresses on their list, since it is our last chance to do so, unfortunately. And they made it. They're in, baby. They're in the 10. Black Dresses, finally. It's been a long journey that also is unfortunately coming to an end. And like getting into the actual discussion, I'm not going to litigate the whole Black Dresses breakup. I will say, selfishly as a fan, I'm kind of sad it happened, especially given the momentum they had, but also like I am very happy it happened, since it was like obviously the right thing for Devi and Rook's health, which is, comes above anything else. And I think it kind of ended like, there's a nice poetry that Peaceful as Hell is their unintentional swan song. Because I think, it was so nice to see them go out on, well, even if it's not the album of theirs that I am like most attached to at this point, like certainly their most accomplished album, I would say,
It
like no question. Like them just operating at the absolute peak of their powers.
it also feels very conclusive in a way, kind of.
Well, yeah, that's what I love about like the accidental like closing note of this album. I think it's so like I don't know what
Yeah,
the
like the
word
last
is.
couple songs, especially "Please Be Nice."
Well, yeah, although "Please Be Nice" is like kind of unfortunately
Oh yeah,
prophetic. They
true.
said "Please Be Nice," and some of the internet said no. Um,
Yeah.
but 666 is really what I'm thinking about. That is
Oh
such a
yeah, that too.
beautiful closing note for the project, and I think it is such a like incredible mic drop that like the last thing they say on record as Black Dresses is like, maybe we'll fix it later. And like somehow that is so much more potent and powerful, and just again like a great little mic drop moment, knowing they're not going to and they don't need to really, because they left us with, in my opinion, like basically a perfect discography that also like on account of their short-lived like tenure, I think is only going to grow in stature over time, and like is going to continue developing a cult following like among the right kinds of people. So like as bummed out as I was, and like actually like re-listening to the album today, because I didn't listen to Black Dresses that much last year after them, or this year after being them like my most listened to artist of the last 2 years. um just because like it was almost like well, literally a fresh breakup. Like it was a bit too raw for me to go back, and I was like, it's just gonna bum me out because I'm gonna be thinking about how I'm not gonna get any more of this. Like I'm not gonna get any more of the ideal band for my ears and brainworms. But re-listening to today, I was like, you know what? They're just a great band. I'm so glad I get to like listen to this music forever now, because it's like basically some of the best music people have made in a while. And I'm just so glad it's in my life. And so I think re-listening to today actually gave me permission to like open the Black Dresses wormhole again and really like dive back into them, and also spend a lot more time with this album, as I should have been doing all year, because it is so good. I don't know if we want to run through some like highlight moments, but I feel like the thing this album does to sort of set it apart from the rest for me is this is really like them attaining total mastery over their control of like sound and structure. There are so many moments on this album that just should not work, should not feel cohesive, and yet they are just like so good at what they do that they like totally work. And even albums that, or songs that like should not work on the same album, like Please Be Nice and Mirror Girl should not happen on the same project. Never mind like work really well together. And yet they do, because it just like, whether it's like a more rock leaning thing or a more electronic leaning thing, or like, both within the same moment almost. Beautiful Friendship. Uh, it just like that's just what Black Dresses is, and you just get to hear them like be in the best Black Dresses that they can be, and it is glorious.
Yeah, I think that's part of why like this is also a particularly like good note to end off on, is it's them doing like the most of what they've done in their career. It kind of has the most kind of all encompassing feel. It like collects all the different sort of like vibes and sounds and like subject matters that they've sung about, and it kind of like facilitates all of that in this like much bigger package than they've kind of dealt with before. One of the parts that I kind of wanted to mention as well is it's like it's almost kind of a perfect end cap, that the line right before the kind of ad-libbed like impromptu off mic bit that happens at the end of 666 is "So long as we're together, hell's the safest place for us to be," which is just this. It becomes increasingly more poetic for the fact that it's like, even though they will not be like making music further together in this particular project, they're still clearly like in it together, and the discography itself is almost kind of like a collection of like it's kind of a permanent record of them being together and them kind of existing in this space and growing with each other and like finding comfort in each other, and I think that that's like especially beautiful.
Yeah, totally. And I think as closing lines go, like that also is kind of this great summation of like what their whole output has been about. Like that is almost like the thesis statement of their discography, is like, yeah, it feels shitty being in like trans girl hell world a lot of the time, but like you're not alone in it, and so you can learn to like find joy and happiness in it through like the other people you find in similar spaces, or in similar places in their lives, the other people you hear through the void, as it were. uh, uh, yeah, and I think it's so great of them to end it on that note. as well. And I think also like what this album really showcases, maybe better than like some of the more, I guess, like quote unquote like unapproachable albums in their discography do, is that like they do have such an emphasis within their music on like joy and optimism and tenacity and getting through things. And as much as there's this very candid acknowledgement of, you know, the various ways they're suffering and that the world is imposing suffering on them, that, you know, they're not so concerned as they might have been earlier in their discography with really like, you know, focusing on that and litigating that as they are with like, well, whatever, that stuff's always going to be there. Like, let's just try to have like as good a time as we can. And I think that sort of focus on the more uplifting side of things is also really, really important and like really profound politically in a world that still wants to like romanticize and fixate on like trans suffering and trans tragedy. Like a lot of Black Dresses music, and especially on this album, feels like, look, you don't get to like do whatever you want with like the concept of our suffering. Like we get to decide how we feel about this, and like what we feel about this in 2020 is like we really don't care and would prefer to just like have fun.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
like
absolutely.
Rook's opening lines on "I'm a freak because I'm always freaked out." Like, I just want to be nice.
Yeah. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
so much in this album about just like wanting to see the good in things and being kind of like bored and done with your own suffering and just wanting to like move on to something better. And again, it's so profound that like through the making of this record, they like quite literally did.
Yeah. It's I kind of have like a couple of points to kind of connect all of this together, but like for me, I think what I've especially kind of grappled onto is the fact that it's looking at the progression of their discography and the kind of like mood and outlook that they're taking on. It very much kind of shows that progression of like moving from like processing and documenting the suffering and the reaction to it, and into a space where it's more of kind of, let's try to find the joy in what we can. Let's try to like reclaim this space for each other. And the ways that this album kind of like puts that forward, especially on something like, say, Beautiful Friendship, it's like it feels especially kind of joyous because the end note that they get to have is this kind of nice little uplifting space where it's more about kind of like what they've found in the wake of all of this and kind of how they're kind of bringing themselves together. And I feel like that's, to bring the album title into it, which is what I've been thinking about a lot. I've kind of been like processing it as a way of like the kind of expectations that especially like cis-normative society like puts on trans girls, and this like sort of idea that their lives are full of suffering, or the idea that like only the kind of like complacent ones are the ones that can be like accepted by society. And I feel like that's an idea that the album kind of like constantly keeps returning to, and it's one that they're kind of trying to find their own sort of meaning with, and trying to put their own sort of experience in refuting or complicating and saying, well, that's not quite it. There is joy, there is community. We can express our frustrations with these things and still be valid and still be heard. And I feel like there's so much kind of going on here that is on in all of these kind of like disparate approaches, but really comes together as this really cohesive thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. Yeah, and again, I think that is so important and potent, especially this being like the album of theirs that, you know, by far had the highest profile release and like got the most exposure, which again proved to be like a not entirely great thing. But for like that to be the primary takeaway that at least I like hope people are getting from this album, is yeah, really, really potent and important. And also like kind of indicates this thing, because as Black Dresses have sort of gained traction, there's been this almost like memification of how like dark and tortured they can be, or how candid they can be about their trauma. And like I you know, relating to some of their music in the way that I do, have been like somewhat guilty of that as well. But like it's really doing them a disservice, because like, and this is a train I really started getting on around Love and Affection, is that like Black Dresses are funny as shit. Like,
Oh yeah, like
they're so funny.
like they can make something that feels so profound, but also is just like so fucking funny in context.
Yeah, they got jokes.
Like Debbie just straight up screaming "fuck this shit" is so goddamn cathartic and hilarious in a way.
Literally,
yeah, I mean,
literally making a joke on Creep You.
yeah, like
Did I
these
make you
Connect and
laugh?
Creep You are funny songs. I'm trying to. I know there's another one on here.
I mean, to get back to our earlier discussion, like you were talking about, like this is the kind of album that you feel a band can only make when they've like really mastered their control, and like it totally tracks because like you see them making all these really insane left pivots that like you'd only be able to get away with if you like have the audience who is willing to trust you to go that turn, you know?
Yeah, and also just to have the skill as a songwriter or producer to make that work. Because like I can slam two things that sound very different from each other, like up against each other in Logic, and like it's not gonna sound good. Like the fact that Bliss and Stupidity sounds at all like a song is like this insane feat of song structuring and production.
Yeah, that's the one that I had in mind for that too, because it starts in such a different place from where it ends, and yet it feels so fluid and so natural. And that's really kind of the sort of thing that they could only do kind of at this point in their career, kind of having this dynamic under their belt, this idea of their sound. And so that's yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Like if another band tried to do that, it would just sound like 5 song fragments again, like slapped together in a DAW. And then they're so good that when they do it, it feels like this like 3-minute pop opera. You like go on a journey through all these like strange, disparate sounds. And yeah, again, going back to the Joy thing, like it's fun. And that seems silly to say, but it is like so important to me to like have albums by trans people that are like joyous and fun. And I think this is certainly like up there in their discography for that. And that too is like a great note to have them go out on. That like again, there to loop all the way back around, there is kind of that incidental poetry that this album like really does sound like them kind of like finally after the journey of the first 3 albums, first three, yeah, like finding their bliss. And you know, and then they did, and it makes the whole thing feel so much more powerful because of that. And like again, as bummed out as I was that they, you know, broke up, and like why they broke up, I was very mad at other people about, but ultimately like I wouldn't have them go out any other way than this. And again, we get to like now have them be like one of the few bands with essentially a perfect discography.
Absolutely, yeah.
Sounds all right.
Peaceful as hell, baby. We can move on.
Alrighty.
Yeah, I feel like that's a good entry just for just all the records that got released this year that could be described as dressy core. I think we're calling it.
Yeah. We'll slot the 12 dressy core records that came out this year as an honorable mention, as always. This is just the like you know, emblematic representative. The delegate.
Oh boy. Alrighty then. So that was number 8, Black Dresses, Peaceful as Hell. We're now on to number 7. Dill, what is number 7?
Number 7 is Nico. I will also never stop going in jar. With Sanizas, which is the second of the 3 records that he put out this year. Just an absolutely incredible year to be a jarhead.
Oh god.
Call me Jake Gyllenhaal, baby.
Oh, I just recorded that with my voice. Okay. Nico's had a huge fucking year. He put out an Against All Logic record back at the beginning of the year, pre-quarantine. Cenizas came out in early April, I think.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah. It was like right about the time when like everything was crushing down around everybody, and the world was on fire.
Yeah, I remember it coming out around the time where it was like, okay, this lockdown shit's getting old.
Yeah, and it also was a perfect album for that because the album cover it's very sleek, it's very simple. It's an inverted face silhouette, which also just looks like that one scene in Twin Peaks: The Return when the guy gets his face just fucking like inverted from Evil Coop. But anyway, Nico put out this record. He coasted on this for a little bit. Then he put out the third record, Telas, July, I think, mid to late July. and that one was another trip in its own right, which is also a great fucking record. But I had to lean on Sending Us. This one had easily the most, I think, greater crossover appeal of all of his records this year, because it feels so much more of a synthesis of his ambient work, a little bit of his AAL influence coming in right there, and also just at several points completely just blowing his experimental leanings just out of the water. This is an incredible record from him. This is number 2 on my own personal list this year, and it really feels like Nico's magnum opus up to this point. Just the care that he put into into the record, and the care that he put into the context and the narrative surrounding the record as well, because there's a feeling of displacement that comes with the record that just felt really eerily timely for the time that it came out. And with other themes that he explored in Talas as well. I mean, he's exploring these notions of indigenous rights, of uh, global oppression, of this capitalist realism that feels like it's crumbling down around us, which again is also stuff that is explored in Sirens and explored in his other work as well. He, at his heart, is a political musician. He is a political artist, and he does it in a way that feels very poetic, and pulls a lot from, I think, his father, who was a Chilean visual artist who was persecuted and had to flee Chile from the Pinochet regime back in the 80s. But Talas is really, I think, central to also talking about this record, because that has to do a whole lot with leaning into themes of water rights and Palestinian rights. He debuted Talas on Radio Al Hara, which was uh, I believe it was a Palestinian West Bank uh, like satellite radio station. And he talks a whole lot about the rights of Palestinians and the rights to their water and the rights to their land in that record. And that same property carries into Sydney Zoss as well, but in a much more, I think, abstract way, because he's pulling on this feeling of, again, displacement and feeling alone in the world, and carrying the weight of history upon one's shoulders, and figuring out what to do with that exhaustion. And all of these feel very much like 2020. I am saying stuff here, and you're thinking that I'm just kind of making this up, because these are the themes that have been recurring throughout the year. But I think Nico realizes that the burden of neo-capitalist realism uh, is finally coming home to roost, and the pandemic is more of a sign of that. It is a precursor of that, rather than the thing that is making all of this occur, in a way. And so the record just has some of his best bits on it, time and time again. I really love Agosto, which is it feels more like an interlude of sorts, but even the interludes on this thing are just uh, completely stacked. Hello Chain has been one that we've just constantly been talking about in the Discord server as well. I think everyone here has listened to it and has loved it. But then you have stuff like Mud, which feels like this very declarative, battle cry almost. It feels like beating war drums and getting prepared for something. And it's very dark at certain points. And then you have
Yeah, I was gonna shout out Mud is like inarguably one of the best things he's ever done.
oh yeah, no,
That was
Mud.
the immediate stunner for me when I heard that album.
Yeah,
Same here, yeah.
Mud is absolutely incredible. I remember being in the Twitch stream of this because he streamed it on Twitch. I think like a week or two before he actually dropped the record.
Right.
And I remember being in there, and he constructed this whole elaborate process for that Twitch stream as well. He had this like visual, like audio visual aspect to the stream as well. And I think he also like created a website too as well. Like he's an artist like through and through. Like he completely understands the new mode of like art distribution now, and that you can't just lock it away behind museums and these traveling exhibitions that only a select few people in North America and Europe are going to see. He's very much a populist in the way that he distributes his work and the way that he offers himself up to the world, which I think is one of the main things that draws me to him as a creative, is the willingness for Nico to offer himself up to the world like that and offer his art up to the world like that. And that translates again into the rest of the songs on this record. I really love Sunder, which is just this really repetitive tone to it, which feels more like an AAL track. Hello Chain, again, is one that just feels very blissful, very serene, but carries a sadness with it. And Faith Made of Silk, again, is one of the best album closers I think I've ever heard. And I think it's maybe one of the best songs he's ever done as well. I mean, this one just feels so completely out of left field comparatively to everything else on the record that it just immediately like sticks out on its own.
Yeah, I remember when we were kind of all doing our first listens, like a couple people were ahead of me and were like shouting in the Discord about Fade Made of Silk. And I was like, well, spoiling the closer a little bit. And then still when I got to it, I was like, wow.
Yeah, even today as I was doing my re-listen to it, I like forgot that it is like that much more of like a big like sonic jump, and it feels like such a kind of big monumental closer after the rest of the vibe of the record. It really kind of has that impact for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. I re-listened to it the other day, and like I realized when I was revisiting it that this like almost certainly would be in my top 10 if I had had like more than 2 brain cells to spare this year. Like to go off what you were saying earlier, like similar to Peaceful as Hell, like whether or not this is the album of his I've connected with personally like the most so far, like at the very least, this is undeniably his most accomplished and sophisticated record, which is simultaneously like a huge compliment and a huge drawback for me, just because it was like too much for my quarantine-addled pea brain to handle. Like I remember listening to it and thinking, like, one, like you said, like, wow, it sounds like you recorded all this 2 weeks ago because this is hitting home. But also, like, because of that, I don't know if I am in the place to like best appreciate and process like the clearly monumental amount of thought that is being put into this record right now. And so like I just have not listened to it enough, unfortunately. Like, and you know, I mostly appeared on this episode to talk about Peaceful as Hell because, like, truth be told, you know, the 3 things I have been able to like really stand listening to this year have been like podcasts, Meshuggah, and like the 1 hour loop of the save menu music from Ico. Like that's where I'm at. And so listening to Sinizos, I was like, no, it's disrespectful for me to listen to this record while I'm in this place. But I think that's fine too, because I think I realized I was maybe like being a bit hard on myself for sleeping on this yesterday. It was like, no, well, like if you think about it, like it's taken me probably a year and a half to feel like I fully have a handle on all the mainline Nico records. Like It took me a long time to like wrap my head around Spaces Only Noise. Like took me an even longer time to wrap my head around Sirens. And so, and I think that's one of the beautiful things about his work is that like because of all the thought he puts into it and the thought you need to put into it in turn, like it ends up having this longevity where like, I remember listening to Sirens like for the first time in a bit, like after the first AAL record had come out and still being like, oh wow, okay, wow, like and so I am absolutely confident that I will have that relationship with this record going forward too. Again, once I have more than like 2 brain cells to spare. So, like I said, almost like honorary top 10 because it is. Listening to it again, you're like, yeah, this is just phenomenally impressive and easily ranks as among his best works.
Yeah, and it's strange in a way how much this record felt like a precursor to how the rest of the year in ambient bleeps kind of shaped out, because you if you go back and you listen to some of the other ambient records that came out this year, you have your Juliana Barwick record, and you have your William Basinski and your Anna Roxanne, and when you cycle through all these different records, you kind of find that they lean in one of two directions. Either they go into the blissful section and that feeling of stasis and trying to find peace in a crowded world, which is what ambient it traditionally does, um, or it leans more into that very evocative, uh, like you said, that inability to like wrap yourself around everything and trying to it feels like feeling your way around in the dark almost, and you don't really know what you're going to find or what you're really looking for at the end. And Senuzas just balances both of these emotions really, really, really well. Um, I
Yeah,
think
definitely. Oh, go
yeah.
ahead.
No, no, no. I think I've exhausted everything that I have to say about this record at the moment. Um, yeah, no, this is an incredible record. I love Nico so much. I love him so much. And if it wasn't for Phil just doing the dang thing, this would absolutely be my album of the year. So
Yeah, and just as like a final aside, like I only listened to a small smattering of it, but it interestingly seemed like this was like a very big year for almost like politicized ambient music in a very new way. I guess because now like everyone is forced into this stillness, and so suddenly stillness is becoming a lot more fraught with like it's no longer an escapist space. It's very much like an imposition of the failings of the world, and that it seems like that started to get reflected more and more in the electronic music of this year. And I feel like Sinizas was absolutely like leading the charge on that front.
Well, you also like this is a strangely big year for ambient. Like not even, like I noted the Nico stuff and the William Basinski stuff, but also like the Caretaker became a TikTok meme.
Oh yeah, that was
And
this year.
yeah, like the absolute like most bonkers shit happened with ambient this year. Like Sarah Davachi got like a huge amount of attention as well, and just it was so strange. But I think it really loans well to the power of ambient music. Uh, that people are able to connect with it at a time when I think ambient music is needed the most.
Mm-hmm.
And that exhaustion needs to be put somewhere. That stress needs to be put into something. Um, and even though we've lost, some of the ambient greats, like Harold Budd died last week, I think, or maybe 2 weeks ago, and then
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and then Pauline Anna Strum died yesterday, I believe. Um, the genre, I think has just it's reaching a sort of, I think, cultural apex that I think post rock hit in the early 2000s, like post 9/11 kind of thing. And I truly do believe that ambient music, if it continues down on this path, is absolutely going to reach that sort of like critical cultural mass at a certain point. You know, the further we go into Hell World, the more people are going to be drawn into that stasis and that stillness in music.
Totally.
All right, Matty, I've said my piece. We can move on.
Alrighty then. All right, so number 7, Nicholas Jar, Cinzia's. Is it? Did I say that right?
I think, yeah, I think
Thank
so.
you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we have one more album on our list for this episode. Of course, 11 through 6, 1 through 5 coming later. But of course, to end off this episode, our number 6 album of the year, Jeff Rosenstock, No Dream, Rose. Take it away.
Okay, so honestly, I am just going to be the one to do it by default because I'm not really sure anyone else here is like hugely enthusiastic about it. I love Jeff a whole lot. Worry was like formerly my favorite album of all time. It was a fucking monumental release. And so Post kind of disappointed me by comparison because like it was trying to do a lot of big stuff and it just didn't hit for me. This new one is definitely a redemption in some sort because like he's bringing back a lot of the weirder stuff, which is what I really hope for because like latter era bomb the music industry is such a bizarre fucking project to listen to. Like you've got these songs that are bouncing between like ska and just like weird electronic shit and hardcore all at once, and like he's finally starting to blend some of those more bizarre elements in again in a way that feels very cohesive. This album, not 100%. Like honestly, I kind of like the EP he did recently, the 2020 dub that he's been just continually adding material to. That I like that more because it's even more ambitious in terms of like playing with form than this. But like this is still a very very solid record. Like Jeff is able to call bullshit as he sees it, and that's always been his strength as a writer, especially right now, you know, like writing in the era of like the Trump administration stuff and just general grossness of humanity is something he's so good at, and it doesn't stop. And like this is a great record. Like it's a good Jeff record. If you like good Jeff records, then good for you.
Yeah, this is as another noted big Jeff head. This is one that I was initially kind of like I had a lot of enthusiasm for when it dropped and then kind of started to fade on pretty fast. It's now kind of nestled in a nice spot where I've just kind of been like this is here when I want it and it is here like for what it purpose it serves. I feel like for me a lot of it to go back to like a point that Matty made a while ago is that like for me a lot of my connection to like Jeff's music has always kind of been like the live experience, and I feel like while he has had like a number of like those Instagram live streams that have all been like really excellent throughout the year, it's been kind of it feels kind of like I'm missing a certain link to it and like I'm not really connecting to it in that same way that even like kind of had me connecting to Post a little bit more. And in general I feel like I'm kind of as the year has gone on been burnt out more and more by like punk music because I'm just tired at the end of all of this. I need something that like is not as like energetic because I can't keep up with it. But like this album does have like a fair share of some of his more like ambitious things just in terms of like the ways that he structures it, the ways that he plays with fidelity and the different sort of like sounds he goes for, how he can veer on a moment's notice from something kind of like this almost kind of shoegazy like post rock sound into something more like thrash. It's really kind of a testament to the sound and the talent that he's carved out, that he can really just kind of cycle through all these different ideas and put all these different song types on the record, and they can feel so cohesive and feel very much like his signature sound.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny, I talking about the live streams, like I think I almost this year, because again, Two Brain Cells did not get around to this album, unfortunately. But Jeff Rosenstock still felt like he played such a pivotal part in the year for me, just as a presence. It was so nice to have someone in the musical sphere who was able to be like simultaneously so irreverent about the circumstances and yet so earnest and outspoken about what was going on. That it was just a really big part of the year to have that around, and like some of my fondest like quarantine memories will revolve around him. Like I remember my roommate and I like doing a puzzle while watching the first live stream he did, and that was like the first time I felt any modicum of comfort within like the first 2 weeks of isolation. And so yeah, I feel like I want to like almost give a spot to just Jeff Rosenstock as a person who has continued to be like indie music's like weird uncle who will tell it like it is, and be really funny at the same time, which has just been like for me just a spot that has been so necessary in my heart, and I'm so glad that like he has been the one to occupy it in the way he has, even if I haven't listened to his album yet. Sorry, Jeff.
I, I kind of agree with you on that point too, and that's an important point to bring up, just for the fact that like, especially kind of like in the couple months right after this album came out, I remember like obsessively tuning into those streams, and it became kind of like a running joke that like I would always see like the same group of like 3 different internet friends all bounced about in different locations, like somebody that I knew from around here who moved to New York, somebody that I write with who I haven't met in real life yet, like all these different people kind of in the chat or just kind of like messaging each other, most of which was on the like request stream that he did where he pulled out covers of fucking Margaritaville and What's New Pussycat. But it's the kind of thing where like as I kind of like think about it, because I haven't really given much brain space to this album a lot in the second half of the year, and I feel like when I do think about this album, I kind of think about like the ways that like Jeff's writing on like depression and like mental illness kind of translates, if not even like more so, to the current situation, mostly because the sort of song that I kind of always find myself coming back to is The Beauty of Breathing, which is this very sort of morbid, terrifying scenario in which he's sort of trying to practice this mindfulness and these like meditative tendencies, all while like kind of filtering through these like suicidal ideations and different forms of depressive episodes. And it's been the kind of thing that like sadly, like as the year has been going on, has been the angle of his that I feel like I've found more and more resonance with. And like even though I can't get the same effect out of this album than like if it was, say, when he was like touring behind Worry or Post, like songs like that have allowed me to kind of find a new sort of way into his music and find a new sort of like meaning with it to grapple with.
Yeah, I mean, like even though I don't think this record is like his best, obviously, like there's still some all-timer songs that in there, buried in there. Like Beauty of Breathing is definitely one. It's been throwing around for a while. Like he kind of tossed it out a little bit after Post, but like it's now way better form than it was in the demo he like tweeted out 2 years ago.
Yeah, I grabbed that like on my break at work one time, and I had been holding on to that for ages just because of how much it resonated with me.
Yeah, it's really shocking, and that's the title track, No Dream, Scram, and especially Honeymoon Ashtray. That is like one of my favorite songs Jeff has ever done. It sounds like a fucking Murmur era REM song filtered through his lens, and it's so goddamn good. Yeah, just great record.
Yeah, we had some records this year. They were good.
All right, so I guess
big records, big albums, loved it.
Oh my god. Well, actually, so we do have a surprise entry. This was again we'll consider it number 5.5 on our list.
Oh,
You know, I'll let you know, I'll let Michael McDonald take it away. What is number 5.5 on our list? Okay, wait, what? One more time, Mr. McDonald. Okay.
Do you want me to do a Steely Dan tangent just so you have an actual excuse to use that?
Yeah, just so this isn't you doing a drive time bit by your...
You might as well. Okay, so before the recording of this episode, Rose told me to add a peg, Michael McDonald's name peg to the soundboard. Yeah, because our good pal Barely March, who was on the last episode, he started the peg challenge.
Hashtag peg challenge.
Of course, the creator also of the Mother Challenge too, or was that Gavin?
Gavin started the Mother Challenge. Barry started Peg Challenge with my encouragement.
It sounds like he's saying like Ted.
Just remember, just
I heard
Google,
Ted.
Google the lines from Peg that Michael McDonald sings, and you too can do the hashtag Peg challenge. Or pegging, as it's called.
God damn it.
Oh my god. Okay, that is it. I'm not that is it. Hopefully you all enjoyed this episode. We will be back very, very soon to continue to finish off our I'm the Year list, going through number 5 through number 1. But of course, last second recap. Of course, number 10, tied for number 10, Dogleg Melee and Young Jesus, Welcome to Conceptual Beach. Number 9, Adrian Linker, Songs. Number 8, Black Dresses, Peaceful as Hell. Number 7, Nicholas Jar, Cinzias. And number 6, Jeff Rosenstock, No Dream. So that will do it for us for this episode. We will see you all next time, and bye-bye.